There are moments in the history of science when a discovery is so profound, so deeply layered, that it forces even the most logical mind to pause and ask a question that goes far beyond the laboratory. The discovery of DNA was one of those moments, and when you place that discovery next to what the Quran said 1400 years ago, something extraordinary happens. James Watson was an American molecular biologist born in Chicago in 1928. From a very young age, he was obsessed with one question. How does life work? What is the fundamental mechanism behind living things? What is the code that determines who we are, how we grow, how we function, and how we are passed from one generation to the next? This question consumed him entirely. In 1953, working alongside Francis Crick at Cambridge University, Watson made one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history. They identified the double helix structure of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the molecule that carries the genetic instructions for the development, functioning, growth, and reproduction of all known living organisms. For this monumental discovery, Watson and Crick were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1962. But what exactly did Watson discover? And why does it matter so deeply when we look at it through the lens of the Quran? DNA is essentially a code, a language, an instruction manual written inside every single living cell. Inside the nucleus of each of your cells, there is a strand of DNA that, if uncoiled and stretched out, would be approximately 2 meters long. Yet it is folded and compressed so precisely that it fits inside a space that is 1,000 times smaller than the width of a single human hair. The human genome contains approximately 3 billion base pairs. These base pairs form a language of 4 letters arranged in sequences that determine everything about a living organism: the color of your eyes, of your ornacracy, the structure of your heart, the way your brain processes information. Everything is written in this code. Watson spent decades trying to understand this code, and the more he understood, the more he realized something that deeply unsettled the scientific community. This code did not happen by accident. Information does not arise from nothing. Language does not write itself. A code requires a coder. Now let us go to the Quran. In chapter As-Sajda, verse 7 through 9, the Quran says, "He who made everything he created excellent, and he began the creation of man from clay. Then he made his descendants from an extract of a liquid that is held in contempt. Then he proportioned him and breathed into him from his spirit and made for you hearing and sight and hearts." Read that carefully. The Quran is describing the creation of the human being in layers. It begins with the basic material. It moves to the reproductive fluid. It then describes a process of proportioning, a process of arranging and organizing, and then the breathing of spirit. This is not a vague poetic description. This is a layered, sequential description of creation that moves from the material to the biological to the spiritual. The word proportioned in that verse is deeply significant. In Arabic, the word used is sawahu, which means to make something balanced, measured, and precisely arranged. Watson's entire life work was about understanding this precise arrangement. The double helix is not random. It is not approximate. It is mathematically exact. The base pairs always connect in the same way. Adenine always pairs with thymine. Guanine always pairs with cytosine. This precision is not accidental. This is exactly what the Quran describes when it uses the word proportioned. In chapter Al-Infitar, verses 6 through 8, the Quran says, "O mankind, what has deceived you concerning your Lord, the generous who created you, proportioned you, and assembled you in whatever form he willed?" Watson's discovery confirmed that we are indeed assembled. We are not randomly generated. We are constructed according to a precise blueprint that exists before we are born. Every protein in your body is assembled according to instructions written in your DNA. The sequence of amino acids in every protein is determined by the sequence of base pairs in your DNA. This is assembly at the molecular level. This is what the Quran described as assembling you in whatever form he willed, more than 1400 years before Watson identified the mechanism. Then there is the question of information. This is perhaps the most philosophically powerful aspect of Watson's discovery. DNA is not just a chemical, it is information, it carries meaning, it encodes instructions. And here is what makes scientists deeply uncomfortable when they think about it honestly. Information in every context that we have ever studied in the history of science, always comes from an intelligent source. When you find a book, you know someone wrote it. When you find a code, you know someone created it. When you find a language, you know someone designed it. Yet the DNA inside every cell of your body contains more information than an entire encyclopedia set. 3 billion letters of a precise 4-letter code. And the mainstream scientific position is that this information wrote itself over billions of years through random mutations. Watson himself, in his later years, acknowledged the staggering complexity of what he had discovered. He said that the more we learn about DNA, the more we realize how much we do not understand. The machinery inside a single cell is more complex than the most advanced factory ever built by human beings. There are molecular motors inside your cells. There are proofreading mechanisms that check for errors when DNA is copied. There are repair systems that fix mistakes. There are regulatory systems that control which genes are switched on and which are switched off. All of this operates at a level of precision that has no parallel in human engineering. The Quran addresses this directly. In chapter Al-Mulk, verse 3, it says, "He who created 7 heavens in layers, you do not see in the creation of the Most Merciful any inconsistency. So return your vision to the sky. Do you see any breaks?" And in chapter An-Naml, verse 88, it says, "And you see the mountains, thinking them rigid, while they pass as the passing of clouds. It is the work of God who perfected all things." The phrase "who perfected all things" is one of the most scientifically resonant phrases in the entire Quran. Watson's discovery showed us a system of such extraordinary perfection that the scientific community has spent 7 decades trying to reverse engineer it and still cannot fully replicate it. We cannot build DNA from scratch. We cannot create a self-replicating molecule that also carries encoded information. The most advanced laboratories in the world, with the brightest minds and the most sophisticated technology, cannot manufacture life. Yet the Quran describes the Creator as the one who perfected all things, and every layer of DNA research confirms exactly that. There is also the matter of the soul. Watson's discovery, brilliant as it was, hit a wall that no amount of additional research has been able to break through. DNA explains the physical. It explains the biological machinery. But it does not explain consciousness. It does not explain why we are aware of our own existence. It does not explain what makes a human being more than just a collection of molecules executing genetic instructions. The hard problem of consciousness, as philosophers of science call it, remains completely unsolved. The Quran addressed this 1400 years ago. In chapter Al-Isra, verse 85, it says, "And they ask you about the soul. Say, the soul is of the affair of my Lord, and you have not been given of knowledge except a little." This verse is astonishing in its precision. It is not saying that the soul is unknowable in a dismissive way. It is making a very specific claim. The soul belongs to a category of knowledge that is beyond human reach. And Watson's entire career, extraordinary as it was, confirmed exactly this. He unlocked the biological code of life, but he could not find the soul in the double helix. He could not find consciousness in the base pairs. He could not find the thing that makes you, inside the 3 billion letters of the genome. Because that thing, as the Quran told us, is not there to be found by science. It is of the affair of the Lord. When Watson and Crick published their discovery, they ended their paper with one of the most famous understatements in scientific history. They wrote, "It has not escaped our notice that the specific pairing we have postulated immediately suggests a possible copying mechanism for the genetic material." In other words, they knew they had found something enormous. They were being modest about it. But the implications of what they found have only grown more staggering with every passing decade. Every time a new layer of DNA complexity is uncovered, the question becomes harder to avoid. Who wrote this? Who designed this language? Who built these molecular machines? Who installed the proofreading mechanisms? Who created the repair systems? Who wrote the 3 billion letters of code that determine everything about every living human being? The Quran answered that question before Watson was born. In chapter Yasin, verse 82, it says, "His command is only when he intends a thing that he says to it, 'Be,' and it is." Watson discovered the mechanism. The Quran revealed the author. This is not about forcing a connection between science and religion. This is about acknowledging that when one of the greatest scientific discoveries in human history is placed alongside a 1400-year-old text, and the two align with a precision that cannot be explained by coincidence, it deserves serious reflection. Watson gave the world the double helix. The Quran gave the world the truth about who designed it. The more science advances, the more it discovers the depth of what the Quran already said. And the more honestly a person looks at that alignment, the harder it becomes to dismiss. May we all have the courage to follow the evidence wherever it truly leads. And may we never stop asking the questions that matter most. If this video made you think differently about the relationship between science and faith, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every subscription helps this message reach more people who are searching for these answers. Thank you for watching.